members of the gallery and the press, warm welcome to you. I declare open the February meeting of Temora Shire Council, and I advise that this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's webpage for public information, and all present today are reminded that while speaking that you are agreeing to your view and comments being recorded and published, and of course we're reminded that when we're speaking that we use the appropriate language as we do. And Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting. In saying those words, I welcome Mrs. Joy Cornford to the chamber. I don't think it'll be the first time that Mrs. Cornford's been to the chamber, given the history of local government in the family. So you are here, Mrs. Cornford, to deliver our opening prayer, which we do warmly welcome you and thank you.
Our Father, we are thankful with grateful hearts as well as we come into your presence to pray for this council meeting today. For each councillor and council staff, Father mentioned that all that is here today present, we ask for your help and guidance as they work through the agenda before them. We pray for wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, and also for discernment as each item on the agenda is discussed, so that together everything will be worked through thoroughly, Father, for the betterment of our community. May there be a sense of the welfare and true needs of all people. We thank you for each of these people today, for their knowledge, their time, the ability to work together in harmony, and their willingness to serve the people whom they represent. Continue to be with them, Father, in every part of this meeting, and may each one of them recognise that they are greatly appreciated by all that they contribute to our town and district. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. That's a lovely prayer, Mrs. Cornford. Thank you. Now, councillors, apologies, please. Do we have any apologies? I think we have full councillors and full staff. Excellent. So apologies are nil. Any declaration of any interest at this time, please? Councillor Smith.
Rainbow Ball, non-pecuniary interest.
Sorry.
Rainbow Ball, non-pecuniary interest. Thank
you. As President of Can Assist Temora. Thank you. Further declarations at this time? The Deputy Mayor.
I do have one in confidential.
Thank you. Very good. No further declaration at this time. There are no public presentations. The confirmation of the minutes of the January meeting of Temora Shire Council held on the 21st of January. Someone that was present care to move that they be received as true and correct? Councillor Smith, thank you, has moved that way. Seconded for the motion, please. Councillor Oliver, thank you, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. And declare the motion carried. Thank you. Any matters arising, Mr. General Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, a mayoral minute. You have a mayoral minute on your desks. Number one, Council will continue to mourn over the passing of our former State Member of Parliament, the Honourable Ian Armstrong, AMABE. Mr Armstrong served as our then Member for Lachlan and also served as New South Wales Deputy Premier. He was a highly respected figure across the entire state and he earned every bit of it. My warmest reflection on Mr Armstrong is his exceptional recollection of everyone's names. There was none better. Mr Armstrong had a solid working relationship with former mayors of Temora Shire, Mr Spears and Councillor Judd. The respect these three gentlemen had for each other was genuine. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Judd, Mr Spears, the General Manager and I have been invited to attend Mr Armstrong's state funeral in Cowra on Monday the 22nd of February. It's unfortunate Councillor Judd is unable to attend, however we will do our best to represent Council and the community. I know every one of us in Temora Shire will join me on passing on our thoughts and prayers to Mr Armstrong's wife, Mrs Jenny Armstrong, and her entire family. Number 2, that Council will also reflect on the passing of a true legend of New South Wales local government, Mayor Lillian Brady OAM of Temora Shire. Mayor Brady was a councillor for over 40 years and until the time of her death served over 20 years as Mayor. Mayor Brady was also the chairman of her joint organisation, among many other roles. Mayor Brady was a lady who deeply cared about all people, regardless of their rank or station in life. Her commitment and dedication to her Shire community and to our cherished local government sector was something very special. Among many qualities was her sense of fun. Mayor Brady knew how to tell a good joke, getting away with cheeky ones, and she particularly enjoyed making us blush. I know Councillor Judd had a long-standing friendship with her, as did the General Manager, Mr Lavelle, and they, like us all, will continue to hold a special place in our collective hearts for Mayor Brady and all her significant contributions. I've also rang the Deputy Mayor of Temora Shire to formally extend our deepest sympathy. We've lost the true character of local government, however her memory will live on. The thoughts and prayers of Temora Shire Council and the community remain with Mayor Brady's family, friends and her council. Number 3, I've been asked to advise Council that there is a new Local Government Remuneration Tribunal Chairman, Mrs Viv May, PSM. Mrs May will be conducting a review into the various categories and has invited any councillor to make a submission if they wish. And submissions close on the 19th of March, and I can provide any councillor with further information if required. Council places on record our warm congratulations to one of our Shire's farmers and graziers, Mr Darren Bruce. Mr Bruce was named in the Australia Day Honours list, receiving the Australian Fire Service Medal. This is a tremendous honour and is an acknowledgement of his exceptional commitment to the Royal Fire Service over a 30-year period. And there's a recommendation, councillors, that Temora Shire Council write a letter of congratulations to Mr Bruce. And finally, councillors, I am very pleased to advise Council that this week I had a teleconference with the New South Wales Minister for Agriculture, the Honourable Adam Marshall MP. I explained to Minister Marshall Council's very strong desire to meet with him as soon as we can. Further, I explained how crucial it is we have discussions on site about further advancing our Temora Agricultural Innovation Centre. Minister Marshall indicated that our State Member for Cootamundra, Ms Steph Cook, had mentioned this again to him after the General Manager and I made representations to her on behalf of Council. The Minister gave me a firm commitment that he would come out to meet with us and asked me to formally advise Council of his position. And this is very good news, and we have formally written to Ms Cook's office requesting the visit. And councillors, there is a recommendation there that the mayoral recommendation be adopted, and I'll move that way. There's a second to Councillor Reinhold. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion? Councillor Judd. Microphone, Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think I said something about Mr Armstrong last meeting, but I'll just repeat it that he was our local member when we were trying to secure the old Temora Research Station, and it was a great local member to work with, and I'm just sorry that I can't make it on Monday, but on the point number 2, one of the best conferences I went to was years ago when Lillian Brady was there, and also when Carl Scully was the roads minister, and he was a great roads minister actually, and this day Carl got up to give his presentation, and he knew that Lillian was in the crowd, so he gave her a bit of a warm welcome, and so Lillian got straight up and he said, Minister, he says, I'm not here for romance, I'm here for finance. So I brought the house down that day, the way she did it. So, but yes, it's certainly been the institution of conferences, and yeah, our present conferences, if they ever, when they do restart, certainly won't be as good of the characters like we did in the old days. So certainly going to miss it. That's all I think.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Councillor Judd, for those reflections. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, let's go to our business papers. Let's start with, on page 11, the Access and Equity Committee. Now, who is the chairman? Oh, right. So I might, the councillor like to move that the report is received? Councillor Mclaren, Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. So the Director of Environmental Services is the chairman of that committee. Would you like to add anything or highlight? Thank you. The members of that committee, Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Winkie, do you have anything that you'd like to particularly draw to Council's attention? Councillor Winkie?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the one where we're looking to set up a fund to help with mobility access plans within the town. And initially we had a figure of 5,000, as you'll probably see in the notes there. And we moved a motion at the last meeting thinking, well, we really need to probably have at least 10 to kick that off for a start. So just draw their attention to that and ask that they consider that in the budget when it comes around, that we could have that funding for helping access and mobility into shops and all sorts of things, just to give people a little bit more encouragement to get ramps into their shops for mobility purposes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Winkie. Councillor Mclaren.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further on from that meeting, a lady from the Guide Dogs Australia came to Temora during last week and met with Belinda and someone from the engineering department, and we went for a walk around town with Zoe, and she was incredibly enlightening on how those tactile markers work for people who are blind. And we walked over to the town hall and we walked down the main street, and it was very, very informative, and I think there's a lot of things that we can do as a community to improve access for the visually impaired in the future. And there might be a challenge in October on White Cane Day. We might throw down the challenge, see if someone wants to walk from your shop back to the council chambers blindfolded with a person aiding you. I'm prepared to do it, but if it's appropriate, but just to walk in the shoes of someone who is trying to navigate our main street with no vision. Because we have people in the community and little person starting school next year as well. So thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor Mclaren. I certainly would be prepared to do that as well, but I need to remind you that as an umpire that we have 20/20 vision. But no, I certainly take your point on that, and to you, Councillor Winkie, thank you for expanding on that request, because I think ultimately you're suggesting a similar type setup to the heritage program, and to incentivise businesses to, obviously this is not to fund it fully, but for a little bit of assistance. So thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the system that the Heritage Committee have with that funding, that seems to work quite well, and it's pretty well utilised. So I think moving forward, this will be just as utilised as well as the Heritage one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillors, there's the Access and Equity Committee report in its entirety, including that important budget item, but I think the recommendation is to us that that we refer that to the budget estimates effectively. Councillor Mclaren.
I'd like to move that way.
So you move the adoption of the report and its recommendations. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Winkie. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? There's no further discussion. I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Excuse me. Let's go to page 119. The Youth Advisory Committee meeting, and Councillor Slay is the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the report be received. It's, as usual, a very clear report. Gives us a lot of information, but there's a bit of additional information I want to add.
Thank you. Councillor Slay has moved that we receive the report. Councillor Smith, you have seconded that. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Slay.
Thank you. I draw your attention particularly to the item on page 121 about the barista course, which I think is just somewhat typical of this youth committee, that they look, what is it that the young people want? The young people, quite a number of them wanted to become involved in this training program, and I single that out simply as a commendation to the people who've been driving this Youth Advisory Committee over the years. One item that is not mentioned in it is the loss and the gain that we've experienced on this committee. The loss, the Youth Program Coordinator, Melissa Carter, has, for family reasons, moved up to, the name's gone right out of my head, doesn't matter, north of Sydney, up towards Springwood, and will be greatly missed. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to delay her departure for very long. On the other hand, we've now a new youth development officer in Cherie Elwyn, whom I think most people in the hall, in the council will know, and I look forward to very, very exciting changes, exciting developments, exciting growth under the patronage of Cherie Elwyn, a high school teacher on leave for 12 months, if I understand it.
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slay, and I certainly endorse your words, and I would expect on behalf of Council in relation to the loss of Miss Carter. She certainly put her heart and soul into it and had the deep respect and affection of all that seemed to come within her path. So, but we're also excited with Mrs. Elwyn and of course Miss Owen, who I think ably assists her. So thank you very much, Councillor Slay. Further discussion on the report, we go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There surely must be a typo on page 121. Chocolate avocado mousse. Would that?
Very well pointed out. Yes, I'll let that go to the keeper. Councillors, there's nothing further than the Youth Advisory Committee report. Is someone prepared to move the report and its recommendations? Councillor Slay, thank you. Councillor Winkie moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much for that. Councillors, let's go over pardon me, to page 127, the Assets and Operations Committee report, and Councillor Winkie is the chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move that the report be as is, but I just draw your attention to the item on the upgrade of the main street. There is a bit of communique come out, so there may be some discussion about that one, I think, as we go through. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So you're moving, Councillor Winkie, that we receive the report?
Received, yes.
Thank you. Second for the motion, please. Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Now, items in that report, Councillor Winkie, is your microphone meant to be on? No? No. That's all right. We'll get there. Councillors, we have received some additional information from Councillor Judd in relation to 3.6 Hoskin Street Upgrade Stage 2 report on page 176. So if Councillor Happy will defer to Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Chairman of the committee. I apologise for the length of what I've written down, but it's a subject I'm fairly feel fairly strongly about. I was disappointed and a bit surprised at the Assets and Operation Committee last week when the committee only supported a minimalist position with regards to the future upgrading of our 2 adjoining blocks in Hodgson Street, Temora, where council has now been asked to give some guidance as to what treatment and design should be considered for any proposed upgrade. I'll give you a little bit of history. The upgrade of the 2 central CBD blocks from Victoria to Parks Street in 2004 was undertaken while I was mayor at the time, and it wasn't without its controversy. Our engineer at the time, Fabio Giacomo, and myself had taken the plans to an advertised Temora Business Association meeting in November of 2003, and we had a good response from the 7 or 8 regulars who were there. Our outdoor staff started work on the street in early January 2004. My wife Helen and I were away for a few days at the coast when we received a phone call from Councillor Ken Smith saying all hell had broken loose back in Temora. Main Street business owners did not think the council had been serious in starting work, so an urgent business house meeting was convened at the club, and there were 85 people there. I don't know why they don't turn up at ordinary meetings. The resultant action was that a rescission motion was tabled at the January meeting and work was stopped. The January meeting of the Temora Shire Council was packed to the rafters with a public gallery, and even we had members in this horseshoe in the middle here filling up that part. Council at the time, though, did not support the rescission motion and work resumed on the main street. Councils, even though this work was done 17 years ago, I believe it still looks good today. And we keep getting favourable comments about our main street. But I would say the same can be said about other parts of our main street. As mayor at the time, the council since then, it was always my understanding that would we return to finish the job in the adjoining blocks. But as a councillor for Airy Park as well, I've also been working to have the main street of Airy Park upgraded. So it's taken longer to get the work done at Airy Park and also longer to get back to finish the work in Temora. Councillors and staff, when I come to Temora and visit the southern block in Hodgson Street from Victoria to Britannia Street in particular, I'm acutely embarrassed. As a councillor, I feel I've let the business owners and residents in this area down for not getting back to finish this job sooner. I've been on several of the mayor's walk and talk tours, and the response and questions we got from the southern block has always been, why are we being treated like second-class citizens and business owners? Councillors, when one has an objective look at the southern block, it really looks like it is unloved and forgotten, and certainly not of a standard befitting the main street and state road thoroughfare of Temora and our great shire. As a member of our Shire's Heritage Committee, I was encouraged this month by the discussion at the February meeting and the consideration of an incentive scheme for shop owners to improve and upgrade the facades and appearance of our main street businesses. We have already achieved a lot of improvement in the main street, but committee members could see the potential of what could keep happening in our main street if we gave things a little encouragement. After last week's Assets and Committee room, I did check with our council's heritage advisor, David Scobie, for possible ideas on the way forward. Mr Scobie supports continuation and development of the main themes that have already been established in the main 2 shopping blocks. He added that while many neighbouring towns use pavers, Temora went with a coloured concrete option. And this has proven to be a lasting and useful treatment, which is not dated in 17 years and still retains a fresh and contemporary setting for the business and community environment, which has been the main objective. Temora's main street has a unique character and avoids a streetscape appearing the same or similar to other towns. It shows that our community sets high standards and cares about the quality, character and amenity provided to visitors and the residents. We have used high quality natural materials in our street furniture, and the high quality and colourful plantings by our parks and garden staff illustrate the level of pride we have in our town. Mr Scobie said the street trees have also been carefully retained so that the street canopies provide visual character and amenity without blocking the views to and from the business premises. David Scobie, in his work with 6 other councils, indicates there are a number of common issues with regional councils. That is, the number of retail and commercial premises is changing. There is a reduction in traditional retail business and increases in commercial and food and beverages business operations. There is an increase in certain residents wanting to live more centrally. Hotels are changing hands. The new management have increased their emphasis on hospitality, food and events. The loss of financial services is being replaced with agencies, local commerce and special banks adapted for short stay accommodation. Health and related community services are occupying central locations with benefits for their customers and the local business. There is increase in secondary dwellings in central areas, and since COVID, many residents have been working from their homes for periods and walking frequently to the local shop and coffee shops. The majority of the councils are seeking to improve the quality and offerings within their central business areas. This strategy is part of seeking to retain existing business groups in addition to provide good settings for new business people and operations. Increasing the capacity and amenity of footpaths is the most common feature of this activity. Publications on main streets by RMS and others have long featured increased planning, outdoor seating, outdoor dining and pedestrian amenity. The need for accessible ramps, crossings and barrier-free areas has never been greater. The design for the central area in Temora has been very successful and has succeeded for the local community. It has been a boon for business and is admired by the visitors, not least due to its unique qualities. While the uses in the adjoining blocks do not have the intensity of the central area, they are likely to change in the next decade in accordance with above trends. A number of these things have already changed since 2004, with library and the Pinnacle being set up in the NRCC house, a new medical centre complex being built, the community centre being relocated to the southern end of the main street, while we have Woolworths and other developments in the northern end. Mr Scobie concludes by saying that Temora needs to have a level of quality equal to any in the region and should not accept a lower or short-term solution. Councillors, as a council, we should not be saying we'll settle for second best. In conclusion, as our engineering technical manager Rob Fisher said it in committee last week, if we go down the path of a minimalist solution, in 1 or 2 years' time, we just can't go back and start and say, oh, we're going to go back and do the 2004 version now. We need to get the light poles and new trees in the right position now. To try and mix new concrete up against the old second grade stuff is fraught with danger. It will only result in an outcry from the public to the engineer asking why are we only doing half a job. This was a similar scenario at Airy Park in 2016 when we planned to renew all the old concrete. Not even had questions from those in authority saying why are we changing the concrete. Fortunately, council saw the wisdom of renewing everything. Councillors, as a community and a council, we must decide what we want our main street to look like in the next 50 years. I will argue that we must get the vision right first and then worry about how we're going to pay for it. Our town planner Claire Gold told us at the last meeting that there is a surge in demand for housing and property with many new job opportunities in the pipeline. There are good prospects that our population will increase. Back in November 19, Councillor Mclaren and myself took our Mayor and GM on tour of the drought-ravaged northwest sector of the Shire. One local farmer told us that he wasn't looking for assistance at home, farm or on his road. He wanted his local town to be the place where he could go, relax and have a drink, have a coffee and a meal. I believe that as a council we can achieve that goal. As a council we have unprecedented grant funding from both federal and state governments over the past few years, and we have completed projects that were in our strategic plans 5 and 10 years away. Our engineering technical manager Rob Fisher tells me that soon we will have widened all our Class 2 rural seal roads to 7 metres, well ahead of his original predictions. Councillors, I believe we have the financial capacity to do the job on the main street properly and not be skimping on a minimalist solution. Mr Scobie predicts that with COVID there will be further grants to enhance the streetscapes in our communities. So let's be ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Judd, for the effort that you've put in, and I certainly remember, as the chairman of the committee, I'm sure Councillor Winky remember that you voiced your views at that time and you've articulated them very well here in the chamber today.
Could I just add?
Yes, Councillor Judd.
A local girl, young mother at Airy Park, Hannah Maguire, has put this image together for us to, it's up on the screen now as well, just showing what, so with the southern block, how the new design on trees and wider footpaths and that could, enhance the stretch of the southern block in particular. And I thank Hannah for doing that work for us.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. So in relation to the 3.6 Hoskin Street upgrade stage 2, which is in the Assets and Operations Committee, so we'll just discuss that particular item at the moment. So the recommendation from the committee that you have before you, that the Deputy Mayor and I put to the committee, that the recommendation is to Council that staff prepare designs and costs for a minimalist solution and report back to Council. So that's the current recommendation that's there before you. So let's tease out what the views were. I certainly know to kick it off, the Councillor Judd is right. The walk and talk tours are very, very extremely informative, and I can't wait for the time when we can resume those, which I hope that we can do so this year. And yes, I do recall them saying that, several shopkeepers, and again, you have to acknowledge that. I do remember that there were several of them also, though, indicated that they didn't seem to think that the cement footpath necessarily need replacing. So that's sort of why I suppose I had in my head that I didn't necessarily believe that it did need replacing. But again, I'm interested to hear other thoughts, because now's the time to talk about it. Councillor Reinhold.
Rightio, okay. As I wasn't here for the Assets and Operations meeting, I would like to just put my 2 cents worth in, or 5 cents. I look around the table and I see 2 retailers, or 1 ex-retailer, so I don't have any pecuniary or interest. Okay, so when you have a business and you're trying to attract customers, you keep your business clean, you try and have nice signage to attract customers, and I was so pleased when I started my business in 2004 that Council were doing the upgrade of the main street. I joined TBEG and have been a member since. Terribly supportive of the main street upgrade. Back then we were all under the impression that the 2 outer blocks would be done at a later stage, and appreciate with budget cuts it was always an easy option to delete the upgrades, but feel now it's the time to push this on. Retail is changing all the time, and we need to encourage tourism to help these businesses survive. TBEG would be very supportive of this as well. They've been a fantastic business group for our town. Their enthusiasm and drive for our local business, it's been fantastic. So I support Councillor Judd in pushing this forward.
Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. I now go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I too, like Councillor Reinhold, was unable to stay for the length of that Assets and Committee meeting due to work commitments. I don't believe we should be just concentrating on a minimalist approach. I think we should have those figures before us as what a minimum cost would be, but we should also consider somewhere along the lines what we were doing with the swimming pool. We have the gold-plated version, we have the one in the middle, then the minimalist one. So I think we've just got to look at all costings of it and then make a decision as to what we can do or can afford or whatever. That's my view of it. I think we do need to probably a little bit better than a minimalist approach, in my view, but perhaps not the gold-plated standard, but somewhere in the middle is a good place to land, I think. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oliver. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the last couple of years, we've spent quite a bit of money improving our town entrances from each direction, north, south, east and west, and they look fantastic. They're growing and they really have a very softening effect as you come into town. But from the south, you come in and then you turn the corner and you head into the main street, and one of the first business blocks you see is the Britannia Street, Victoria Street block, and it really is quite harsh and cement and lacking the greenery and the character and the encouragement for social interaction. There's businesses down there that are in hospitality that really could thrive with a treatment like the other two blocks. So I take a long-term view of the upgrade. I trying to think of what the community would want in 10 or 20 or 30 years' time and what I'd like it to look like, and I'd like to think that on such a big capital project we don't have to all do it out of a one-year budget. I think it's a long-term plan, and I think to be uniform and to have that beautiful avenue. I mean, our town doesn't just have to have that 2 central CBD blocks. Young has 4 or 5 or 6 blocks in their main street, and I think if we want to encourage our population to grow, we need to beautify and make our main street as inviting as possible. But I do take a long-term view, and on funding I take a long-term view as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mclaren. That's the thing that obviously it comes to mind. Obviously, I think all of Council 2 is that finance side of it. Thank you. I'll now go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, perhaps the word minimalist was probably not quite the right word to have in there. My thought is that, basically as far as the trees and so forth go, that it would be similar to what the 2 main blocks are as much as possible, realising that, as the engineer said, that the street lights won't work out the same, so there's been an issue there. But I think the main thing my thoughts are that it wouldn't change is the width of the footpath. Once you start changing the width of the footpath and so forth, it ends up being quite a big cost. But if you still have the trees and so forth,
Street furniture and
street furniture, it will look very similar. And whether we do some sort of work on the actual footpath itself now, or it all depends what the costs come back at, and whether council in a position to afford it. But I think we might be taking a bit of getting the word minimalist probably not right, as I said, not the right word to have in there. But I think it would look very similar with the treescape and furniture and so forth as the other 2 blocks, but without having the cost of widening the footpath.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you. I go to Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add my name to the list of apologies of people who didn't get to last week's meeting. It would have been a far more interesting meeting had I done so. Now, the first point I think is that any reference to minimalism doesn't normally sit very well on this shire. I think there are some shires that should be adopting that minimalist approach. I don't think we are one of them. I also think that David Scobie's advice or reminder that more likely grants are going to become available afterwards. I think, once the government can get a minister who's prepared to give grants now, it should be, we should be in a situation where we can access long term, and I'm not talking in 2 years, 4 years, we're talking some long term. We've been doing some excellent work in this place because of the vision. Frankly, as I drive up that from my end of the town up into the central business district, I think to myself, first cousin, second cousin, twice removed. It would be a good idea if we really could have some equality all the way virtually from the railway right up to going out to towards the lake. There's a lot of beauty about this town, and you all know as travellers around the place what it's like when you come into a town, particularly when you haven't seen before. Sometimes you get this idea of a disjointed series of efforts, other times you get a cohesive series, and you think to yourself, I want to live in a cohesive town because that's where people think well together. I understand that one of the major issues relates to water issues and plumbing and so on, rainwater. but that has already been done, so that was a bit of a boost to know that at least that's been done on the southern entrance. But I don't just want to talk about the southern approach, although I'd like to concentrate on that one. But I think we should be equally generous with those in the northern approach. As far as I'm concerned, let's think long term, let's think positively. We will not think extravagantly. We're not an extravagant council, but let us not, I agree with the Deputy Mayor, let us not think minimally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slay. We now go to Councillor Smith.
Yeah, this Main Street thing has been a controversial thing for a long time, and I just think I agree with Councillor Sinclair that it doesn't really need widening the footpath, because the foot traffic down there is not that much that you got to go off the footpath to get past anybody, even when there's 2 or 3 gophers. And I just think I don't mind them doing up the main street as new concrete, you know, similar to what we've got in the main 2 blocks, but I don't think we need to widen it. You know, when you think about it, somebody's got to pay for all this money that we're getting, and sooner or later it's going to come back and snap at our heels. And I'd just like to see the costings brought out, because, you know, it's good to spend money, but most of the time it's ratepayers' money. It's not council money, it's ratepayers' money. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith. I also I think Councillor Oliver, there's some really good thoughts that we're sharing here, and I find it very interesting. I know that I first got on council under then Mayor Councillor Judd. We had elections in March of 2004, and I've never seen such an initiation when Councillor Judd is right. There were people packed out here, in here. It was unbelievable, but I knew in my heart, even in March, that it was the right thing to do at that particular time. But I do like Councillor Oliver's idea, and that is about perhaps looking, and I know that means more work for staff, but I do think that we need to perhaps look at that basic option that perhaps could be afforded now. I know basic minimalist is probably not the correct terms either, but and that middle of the road, and perhaps the other one that is, you know, is the consistent theme for council to have a really good look-see at that, because obviously it's only going to get more expensive the longer that we wait. But again, you know, finance is an issue. Yes, there may well be grants. You know, the mail that I'm getting is that perhaps you know, it won't be the tsunami of funds that we have seen, but again, there will always be some form of grants of some description. So yeah, they're just some of my initial thoughts there, and I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Would it be appropriate to move an amendment to that motion, or a new motion?
Well, I mean, it's up to, you know, you are prepared to put up a new motion, and if that gets up, then that will replace that specific motion relating to 3.6 Hoskin Street upgrade stage 2.
Okay, along the lines of Councillor Oliver's suggestion, can I move that council staff prepare a report on upgrade options for the Britannia Street to Victoria Street sections of the main street on a low, medium and high cost basis? Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. Discussion on that motion, again in relation to 3.6, the Hoskin Street upgrade only. So now discussion on Councillor Judd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's not a perfect motion I like, but it's certainly better than the original one we had. My main concern the other day with the motion made by the committee is that also looking at the timing of this council term, you know, we're only months away from the next election, and I was very determined not to see our council lock in a minimalist outcome for our main street. And I think that we should be doing the work now so that if we don't decide this year, at least it's all ready for a new council to decide how they want the new main street to be. So,
And perhaps with this motion that's before us, Councillor Judd, that may well do that work. Having those three options, So thank you. A part win, you told me before, Councillor Judd, a part win's better than no win.
I know. Just one other comment. I made a couple of trips in Temora looking at taking photos and things like that, and I took photos and I went down the northern end and took a photo up the northern end, and went home and looked at it. I said, not one tree in the northern end, in the northern block. I said, that can't be right. And I had to come back in that night, went down and checked. I found one stunted tree right down in the far corner. So, but the northern end really looks like a concrete jungle as well. Like it's very hot and, it's not very inviting as well. So it's, we've got to do something about these blocks and continue the theme.
That's right, Councillor Judd. I do think though you'd acknowledge that I think that the southern end, I think we all wanted both done and committed to that, but I think that we all agree that the southern block was the priority in terms of next steps.
Especially.
Sorry, Councillor. I'll now go to Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just look at the blocks on the northern end, and I look at Woolworths car park there, and like I said, I don't mind if you say, right, we'll redo the footpath on the width it is, but being a car park there and then a service station, virtually you got in that part of the block, half of that block is the foot traffic on that would be very minimum, and I just think it's a bit of a waste of ratepayers' money if we widen the footpath out and do the footpath the way it is, not a problem. It's a bit like the other end. I'm a bit disappointed in one of the occupiers down there with a container type workshop, whatever it is.
The heritage one.
The heritage one, yeah, and I'm a bit disappointed in that, but I'm sure that there must be something that can go in there and re-enhance that part of the main street.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Any other comments? We have a motion that's before us, and we're all clear on the motion. I know Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we need to be very, very careful that we do the study that Councillor Oliver has recommended, and that we use that as the foundation for our next council, so that they can have a look at it and say, yes, well, we are often hearing, and I was particularly impressed when I heard this coming from Claire Gold the other day at our meeting, because she speaks with such confidence and such enthusiasm, and we're talking about, yes, the population of the town, we're hearing it from the EMO and so on. The population of the town is growing. Let us not give to our new councillors the obligation to think small when they are at the beginning of a burgeoning community. You're concerned that, well, will these grants still keep coming? We don't know. I mean, nobody predicted that they were going to come in the first place, I don't think. But if they do, it is essential that we are ready. What's the word? Shovel ready, is it?
Yes.
That we're shovel ready to go ahead, that we've got some concrete ideas in our mind. So let's not make decisions based on what happens today. Let's make decisions based on what we think will be like in 5 or 10 years' time.
No, thank you, Councillor Slay. And just for further clarification, I think that the Deputy Mayor, what we had in mind at the time was something that, if we could do something that was not the gold-plated version, we more realistic chance of getting it done in the short term. I suppose that was the thinking. However, I think the motion that's before us is, well, to me, seems very positive one. I'll go to Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My only concern with the motion is that it's dealing with just costings, design costings, and I'd like to see some work done, and as I mentioned before, about the vision of how we'd like our Main Street to be, you know, and that might not come out in just looking at the financial figures of doing things, you know. Maybe we need some more artistic work on how different options will look, you know, like, and
I think design though,
yeah, I know, but
yeah, that's what I thought the motion meant, yeah.
anyway, it's a vision thing I'd like to see a bit more of, you know, so, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the Deputy Mayor. Further discussion on the motion?
Just to query on the motion, it's only dealing with the southern end. We're not looking at the northern end at all at this stage. There is a lot more issues, I think, isn't there, with the water.
In the northern?
On the northern end, but I think it still comes into play a bit because if you want to keep everything equal, whatever we do the southern end, we're probably going to look at doing the same thing on the northern end, and how that how that works out with controlling the water, like underground water and so forth. Maybe the engineer could make a comment on that.
So the engineering technical manager, are you able to comment, please? Can I have other councillors? Sorry, thank you. The engineering technical manager.
My view would be is that you should at least design a holistic design, both blocks, straight up now, and then work out what council wants to fund, and then I'd probably encourage the fact that if council couldn't afford to deliver even one end, that you defer the project until the money was there, accumulate it over a couple of years or whatever, and then do it in a job lot, because the idea of staging or chipping away at a block, there's just too much disruption, too much complication to have more than one go at it. I think you definitely need to only have one go at the southern end and one go at the northern end. And I don't think there's any rush. The main thing is that we go in there once and come out the other end with the final product.
Thank you. Now to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we've got to have a holistic look at this. We've got to look at the south and the north. We've got to be shovel ready. Perhaps when a grant becomes available, we can apply for it, and we're ready to go. I think that's what I would sort of thought that we would be looking at doing. So
yeah, you tease out, the council of the day would tease out if this motion got up, or if the mover and seconder want to add something. That would be teased out by the council of the day. They land on a position and then work out how we go about funding it from there. Okay, thank you. Now the Deputy Mayor.
So in regard to the motion, I'd prefer to see both blocks included.
Well, I think that's the mover and seconder. I think they were going to include that. So the mover and seconder, you're happy to include in your motion, Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Oliver, that it would be both the Britannia to Victoria and the, what are we calling it, Parks to Polaris.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Okay, mover and seconder have included that. Thank you very much. Okay, councillors, I think we've had, there we are. Councillor Winky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Discussion on the motion.
It's actually in the first part of the report, if we go back to that it's listed both under the southern block and the northern block, and the design work was to be done for both blocks. So it's already included in there.
Yeah, it wasn't in the resolution, yeah. Yeah, no, that is true. So, however, we have the motion that's before us, and you can see it. I'll read it out. Councillor Mclaren and Councillor Oliver have a motion before us that the report REP 21/126 Hoskin Street Upgrade Stage 2 that council staff prepare a design and costings on a low, medium and high solution for the Britannia to Victoria Street block and the Parks to Polaris Street block, and report back to council. We've had discussion, which I think has been excellent. If there's no further discussion, I will now put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Judd, for stimulating further debate. That's for sure. Thank you, councillors. Now, we have the remainder of the Assets and Operations Committee report and the recommendations. Is someone, sorry?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd
Councillor
like
Oliver.
to speak on the community survey, recreation open spaces strategy. That's the draft
Yes.
survey. Question 15, maintenance upgrades and that sort of stuff.
So the page, sorry, councillor.
It would be page 165.
Thank you.
I'd like to see one extra question in there if it were possible. And it would be, would your club organisation consider building war chests to contribute to future development? Either strongly agree, or whatever the box they like to tick.
I don't have an issue
Thank you,
with
Mr.
that.
Mayor.
I know, thanks, Councillor Oliver. I know that the Sports Council met last night with our engineering technical office manager and the town planner and our consultant, Mr. Bryant. And we had a great roll-up, and I was very, very proud of the manner in which our council officers presented themselves, and equally how the sporting club delegates and schools that were there seemed to be very, very keen to have their say in relation to, because we as a sports council sent out this draft saying that, look, this is what council are looking at. Do you have any suggestions, input to help make a decision for councillors? So they realised that perhaps there are some anomalies and that there is gold plating in many areas, and there's some that are not getting that gold plating. And I commend our engineering technical manager who has been pushing council to look at this issue for some years. Now, thanks to the town planner, we received a grant to be able to engage a consultant, your favourite word, Councillor Smith, to help our staff do the legwork on this important issue. So again, as I said last night, that council want to bring the sporting clubs and schools along this journey. We have started to do that and will continue to do that to help council of the day make a very, very informed decision no matter what where we land. So in relation to your comment, Councillor Oliver, about that suggestion, I certainly don't have an issue. I don't know whether council, you're happy to have that included. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just think it'd give us a bit of a gauge as to how they would like to move forward. I mean, it was very easy when the soccer club came to us with $70,000 and said we want a new clubhouse. It made it pretty simple to tick the box. So if other organisations build up their war chests, come to council, and of course I know that council have an obligation to maintain and upgrade these facilities, but a little bit of contribution from the user groups would go a long way to help.
Exactly.
So, thank you.
Exactly, Councillor Oliver, thank you. And I think there does seem to be a desire, and again, hats off to the soccer club for well, I suppose, starting it. But I think as long as I've been on this council, and I know Councillor Judd and the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Smith in your time as well, that the great thing is this council seems to want to help those particularly that help themselves, exactly. And I love that about this council and the community. So, council happy for that inclusion? Yep, seeing nods. Okay, thank you. Further comments in relation to the Assets and Operations Committee report? Councillor Smith.
Nixon Park tree removal request.
Yes, the page.
172.
Thank you.
I just think if they're going to take the top off, take the bottom out. I know it's going to ruin the netball courts a bit. I don't know the cost of resurfacing or re-rolling or whatever they've got to do. But, they're saying here with the cost factor from 3,000 to 5,000 just to remove the stumps. The stumps are probably easier to remove if the top of the tree's still on it, unless you're going to grind them, and grind them is only just a job. But, this, to me, I think is something that, we're not just going to look at it and we think, well, we've got to make a decision. Well, are we going to take the trees out? Are we going to just take the top off? They want a little bit of help there. It's another one of these people that say, right, we'll do a bit of the work and get a bit of the, reduce the cost. Up to the other people and the thing, but I just think, 3,000 to cut them down, 3 to 5 to take the stumps out. I'd take the whole lot out at once and the job's finished with. Patch the netball courts up, the job's done.
Thanks, Councillor Smith. We'll get the engineer to talk on that. The engineer, would you like to respond to Councillor Smith's suggestion? Your view, professional opinion?
Don't have an issue with his idea. Like, to be honest, if we cut the tops off, really we should be leaving the tree stumps, at least 10 foot to 12 foot high, just to make the stump removal process easy. So if you go and take the top off and leave that stump 12 foot high, it's probably not going to, aesthetically, it's not going to be that nice. I do believe we could remove the whole tree without damaging the courts.
Oh, that's an important question.
I'm not going to guarantee it, but I reckon it's manageable. I'd be going for the full job myself, but there's a cost associated with it.
Thank you. So therefore, if Council went down that path of what Councillor Smith's suggesting, the cost to Council would be, what, 6.5? Or, well, potentially.
Yeah, that'd probably be correct. However, I'm not sure what Council's thinking, but I'd be inclined to ask the football club to pay the removal of the canopies. We waive the tip fees and remove the stumps. I think that's a fair deal, and I think that was really all they were asking for at the start. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Manager. Well, Councillor, in relation to 3.5 on page 172, the Nixon Park tree removal, Councillor Smith, did you wish to put a motion to Council or not?
Can we afford to do the job? Oh, sorry. Can we afford to do the job as...
In our maintenance budget or?
Yes.
So, thank you. The Director of Administration and Finance?
Yeah, we could fund that out of Parks and Gardens maintenance budget for sure. Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I think I'll move that we put forward this, that the council recommend to council the 50% of tree removal cost and 1,500 plus the tipping fees. But if you're going to take the stumps out, you would then have to tear up I can't see Rob there, you'd have to tear up part of that netball court, wouldn't you?
no. What we'll do is we'll excavate down, we'll cut the stumps off at the edge of cut the roots off the edge of the court and then remove the main stump. And, no, I don't think we'll damage the court by...
I don't understand why.
Well, remove the whole tree, the whole lot all at once, and I'll move that if anyone...
So you'll move that we, in terms of the funding, so you're saying that...
Out of the maintenance budget.
Okay, thank you. So you're moving that way in relation to 3.5 Nixon Park tree removal on page 172. Councillor Mclaren, you've seconded the motion?
Happy to, yep.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. The Director?
So we actually wanted to suggest that the football club remove the tree canopy. Do we need that in the resolution?
Well, I think that was the manager's suggestion. The mover and seconder, that will save us some dollars, and I think they were offering Councillor Smith.
Well, if they pushed the trees over and the club took all the canopy away, it would reduce the cost on council, and that's what we're there for. It's a bit of this help yourself, self-help, Thank you.
Thank you. The Engineering Technical Manager?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. believe that the football club have a quote or an estimate of $3,000 to remove the canopies, of which I would suggest if they pay that, we waive the tip fees of $700 odd and we remove the stumps. It might cost us $5,000.
Right.
That'd be a pretty fair deal.
Thank you. So the mover and second, are you happy to go with what the manager's just articulated? Thank you. So have we got that recorded, Madam Director?
Yeah.
We'll get there in the end. Okay, so in relation to 3.5 Nixon Park tree removal request, we have a motion before us from Councillor Smith and Councillor Mclaren that Council fund the removal of the stumps, waive the tip fees with the Temora Australian Football Club funding the removal of the tree canopy. Hang on, that council funded waive the tipping fees and further that Temora Australian Football Club fund the removal of the tree canopy. Yep, that's better. The mover and second are happy with that? Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare that motion carried, so that supersedes the committee recommendation. Thank you. Any further comments or question in relation to the Assets and Operations Committee report? If not, is someone prepared to move the report's adoption? Councillor Winkie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that the reports and recommendations as presented now be adopted.
Thank you very much. Second to the Deputy Mayor. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Indeed, councillors, there was a fair bit in that meeting, but thank you for your perseverance. Let's now go to page 226, the Economic Development and Visitations Committee meeting. I'm the chairman of that committee. Is someone prepared to move that the report is received? Thank you, Councillor Winkie. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, you see there was one item there that was discussed in relation to the Regional Activators Alliance, and you see a business without notice item from Councillor Judd on page 229, and of course there were several matters that were deemed confidential. So someone prepared to move the report and the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Thank you, Councillor Winkie. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our committee reports. We now go to page 232, number 7, delegates reports. We have delegates reports, please. Councillor Winkie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I attended the meeting, the AGM and all general meeting of the Lachlan Valley Transport Group last Saturday at Young. They haven't been meeting very much in the last 12 months, naturally enough, due to COVID, so things have been sort of put on hold a fair bit, but by the time we got through the AGM and got through the homekeeping business with the committee meeting, I think the next meeting will probably see us get back on track again.
Pardon the pun, yeah. Thanks very much, Councillor Winkie, particularly for your involvement with that, and I think it's great that flying the flag for this Shire and the amount of contacts and what have you that you glean from that, I think is a positive thing. So thank you very much. Councillor, just a couple of things that the REROC board will be hosting next Friday week, our state and national president, Councillor Linda Scott, at our board meeting, and her new chief executive, Mr. Phillips, Scott Phillips. So that we're very pleased. The REROC board invited an open invitation and she's reached out to us, so we're very pleased that she'll be addressing the REROC board, and I also think she'll be addressing the JO board as well, Mr Deputy Mayor. So that's that. Then we go to the General Manager, and I will be going to have a New South Wales Country Mayors Executive meeting and a board meeting on the 5th and 6th of March in Sydney, and the JO Chairman's Network as well will meet in Sydney during those times. So that will be a busy time, and the JO Chairman's Network, I think, will be quite an animated session. To be frank, as you know, the Minister has announced that there will be well, she doesn't call it a review, but revisiting the operations of JOs. So she has announced that, but that's all that we've heard so far. She's written to all the JO chairmen, just advising that things. We were supposed to be able to have a look at the draft terms of reference. We've written, the Chief Executive, Mrs Briggs, has written to the Minister asking when do we have that actual opportunity to have input, as has been indicated all along, that we want the board and member councils to have input into the terms of reference. So we're waiting a response on that. But that's, and as I alluded to earlier, that Councillor Oliver and I attended our Sports Council session last night, and it truly, it was a very, very good session. A 2-hour session. We finished about 8:30, but the engineering manager and the town planner didn't mind one bit staying out late and partying with the sporting community. So thank you very much. Any other delegates' reports? Councillor Smith.
Springdale Hall, as per read in the paperwork. Lindy was crook the other night, and I did go to the fruit fly group back in business.
Oh.
They've got, there were 6 new members there the other night. And the fruit fly are rampant in the town, and they really need people to say, come along, join, get rid of the fruit fly. It's not much good at growing things if you can't eat them. Yeah, and anyway, I just thought it went off very well, but I think there was about 20 odd there, which is good. You know, normally I don't think they get that many, but it worked out very well. But they really need people to be a bit more vigilant and get rid of the fruit that's fallen, and anyway, I think they do a great job.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith, and I think we're all pleased that the fruit fly organisation has been re-established, and there's so many new people that are keen to keep it going. I personally not particularly keen on fruit, obviously, because of that, and I know what the doctors told Snow White to eat more fruit, and look what happened to her. Anyway, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Now, further delegates' reports. If no further delegates' reports.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Reinhold.
Yes. Sorry, Councillor Smith stole my thunder. I was going to say the Fruit Fly Committee resumed this week. Also, International Women's Day is approaching, Monday the 8th of March.
8th of March.
So the Women's Network Group are putting on a movie, a free movie, a fairly recent release about women spies in World War II.
Oh, wow.
So it should be a good show. Teabag have got a new coordinator. I think it's Mandy Smith. I think. We also met Cherie Elwin. She came and introduced herself in her new role, and also the principal and vice principal of the high school. They came. We're working on a new program for mentors in businesses to help with students with career paths and having a little taste of what's out there. So that's it.
Yeah, that's great to hear, Councillor Reinhold. Thank you very much. I do also thank Councillor Winkie. Councillor Winkie will be representing Council at the World Day of Prayer on Friday the 5th of March, as I understand it. Is it the 5th? Thank you. So thank you, Councillor Winkie, for accepting. I do regret, but yeah, we'll be in Sydney. But thank you very much for agreeing to represent us. No further delegates' reports. If not, we go to page 233, Mayor's report for January, and over on page 234, there's a recommendation that we note the report. Thank you, Councillor Winkie. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, a motion receiving staff reports, please. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Councillor Mclaren. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Now over to page 236, the General Manager's report, 10.1, calendar of events. The General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's good to see, councillors, that we're finally starting to see something other than our committee and council meetings. And we've got next month is workshop month. There's you got the IPR workshop, and then the Stronger Country Communities, and finishing off with the roads hierarchy. There's a couple of really quite long workshops there, so something to look forward to. Yes, for councillors' information.
Thanks very much, Mr. General Manager and councillors. We, as you know what it's like trying to, select dates and time, but we're always being conscious of not wanting to overload when there's committee papers over the weekend for councillors to read and council papers. So we try to work in as best we can. So there's a recommendation there that we note the report. Councillor Smith, Councillor Winkie, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Over to page 237, 10.2, the operational plan, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just provided for council's information. It's the half-yearly review of actions taken in the operational plan.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, you mentioned earlier that work you believe has commenced on the arts precinct.
No, not commenced.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
That the contract has been signed and.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Councillors, any further items out of the operational plan review? If not, there's a recommendation that the Q2 review is adopted. The Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Reinhold, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Pardon me, councillors, over to page 313, 10.3, seals, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll see there is one seal, that's the contract for sale of 8 Spitfire Drive. There's also another one since then, and that's a deed of mutual rescission on a sale out at the aerodrome where the purchaser has pulled out of the purchase with funding issues. So there was a signing of a deed of mutual rescission. Pleased to say though that block has now been sold anyway, so it's pretty well straight away.
That's good. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Pardon me, councillors, recommendation on page 313 that we affix the seal not only to what's listed on the business paper but the additional. Councillor Winkie, Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, anything of an urgent late nature, Mr. General Manager?
No, I have nothing further. No? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, we go over to page 314 and engineering services once again have nil to report. So we thank them for that.
We're interested in rubber on the road.
No, thank you very much. Councillors, we now go to page 315, the Environmental Services Department report, and 12.1, the DA, is in the hands of the Director.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Reports as written, it's a planning report for a proposed service station development at 193 to 197 Victoria Street. Was advertised and exhibited with a couple of submissions received. The applicant was requested to provide some additional information, which is included in the report, and both the town planner and myself are satisfied that the additional information gives us confidence that this development can be implemented without conflict with the neighbourhood, and we're recommending approval with conditions.
Thanks very much, Mr Director. Councillor Slay? No? I'll go to now Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Question to the Director. The last point about hours of operation, is that what they requested or what we put on the DA?
So the Director?
That was what they...
Councillor Judd. Yeah, thank you. You've got to put it on when you want to speak, put it on please, and then you'll be in the queue. So, the Director.
The hours of operation were a consideration that required some follow-up from the applicant, and they were what they requested.
Thank you. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the respondent's letter on page 335, it says, if necessary, we are willing to install a higher fence or a vegetation to reduce the risks of sparks and flames. Has that been incorporated into the plan? Is there a higher fence between to the western side of the site to stop the risks of sparks, etc.?
Thank you. Councillor Mclaren. Thank you. Sorry, Mr Deputy Mayor. Go to the Director.
That could be a condition of consent. I don't think it's in there at the moment, but that could be a condition of consent.
Thank you. I now go to the Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, in one of the letters, the people were happy with some of the things, was the removal of the tree. I'd also like to see that tree stay at all possible. If it can't, it can't, but it is a nice tree and everything, and it's a good shade tree, so if it's possible to work around it, I'd like to see it stay.
Thanks very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. I go to the Engineering Technical Manager to respond.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So with this particular tree, or with this particular block, you'll note there's currently 2 eucalypts in that block. We are currently, there's an item in this year's budget to do some drainage works at the other end, of which requires the other eucalypt to be removed. And then further down the track, and even possibly before this development, we need to plan for some other underground drainage works, which probably lend itself to removing the other eucalypt and replanting the block in a suitable species. It's not probably ideal. We need to create a boundary at some point on the approach to town, and have some sort of consistency with the planting. And I think once the other eucalypt's gone, this one might be an outlier. It probably can stay there. We probably can work around it. However, in the interest of the entire block, I'd be leaning towards start from scratch.
Thank you, Mr Manager. I go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I took a drive there this afternoon, and it's a very healthy looking tree with a very large shade canopy, so I can understand the business next door wanting to keep the tree. I wondered whether the signage for the fuel station couldn't be on this side of the tree as you're heading out of town on the corner of the block, so the tree didn't block it, say next, learn left, prices, etc. Maybe that could be something to negotiate with the business owner to keep the tree, and maybe there might be some under canopy trimming you might be able to do as well, but it is not an unhealthy tree, and there is some concern about it. So if it could be retained in the proposal, I'd be preferring that
Thank you. The engineering technical manager.
The only other comment that I'd make is if we were to be able to, discuss with the business and come to an agreement that they were happy for the tree to be removed, would council be willing at that point to remove the tree? Because I believe with some discussion that we could come to an agreement would be my thought.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Further discussion on this DA application, the DA before us, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the environmental officer. Second tenancy, is there any take up on that at this stage, and does council have any control over who may go in there or what might go in there?
So, thank you. The Director.
Yeah, I think there's been lots of wild rumours flying around about that, but it's I think it's just going to be a basic kiosk that goes along with the service station. So that's what's been allowed for, and if it's anything different to the DA plans as submitted, they'll require a future development application. But if it's as per plan, they can tenant it with whoever they like.
Thank you. Councillor Winkie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The owner of the engineering works or the building itself approached me about the tree out the front, and I could see his point that it's not only just used for parking for their own for the use of the owner or the person that's working at the moment, but it also gets used a lot by passing traffic. And he even had a picture on his phone. He said, and this is typical, it was a car and caravan that pulled up there in the shade of the trees. It just supplies beautiful shade along there, and it gets used so much along there. And I really think you could put a sign in the service station, and I have taken notice now of some service stations, and they'll have the sign right up on the other end of the block, so you can still see it, because it's a big sign, it's lit up, and you can still see your prices as you're going along. You'd know, you wouldn't have to be in that other corner really. So I think if we could keep the tree, I'd like to see it stay, because it is a beautiful tree.
No, thanks very much, Councillor Winkie. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are similar trees planted up around Landmark on the corner, so it's not we're not going to chop those trees out. So I think we do have similar trees around town. The question about the vapour recovery system to protect the odour and environment, is the business satisfied next door that that will alleviate the dangers from sparks and the dangerous fumes?
Thank you. I will go now. So, sorry, Councillor Smith, this is the tricky thing with this. Thank you. I go now to the Director of Environmental Services.
I'm not sure whether they're satisfied, but it's a fairly common apparatus that uses to protect this very thing. And the fact that we've got a Caltex operating right next to a premises, a residential premises in Hoskin Street, and there's no issue. So I think the system, the proprietary system that recovers the vapours, and the distance between the two lead to not being an issue. But the neighbour hasn't really got back to us after he was notified with the information.
Thanks. Sorry.
You want me to turn this off?
No. Thank you. Councillor Mclaren is holding that thought because you've been patient, and thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
Talking about trees, I can remember when they removed the tree outside Caltex because of the vision problem leaving Caltex, on the northern side of the Caltex, and there was a very, very nice bushy tree there, and it was taken out because of the hazard there. I don't know what the hazard situation is up here in this one, but I'd be quite happy to see this development go ahead, and I'll move the recommendation.
So, Councillor Smith, you're moving the recommendation as per the conditions of consent, etc. Yep, on page 328. That's before. So no, you don't wish to add or delete anything?
But I'm just saying that they removed the tree down there at Caltex as the precedent, this people here, I think they're worried about the hazard there for the look at it. I don't know whether it's the hazard or they're frightened that they can't see their sign.
But you ultimately are just moving what's before us on this page, okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Is it?
Oh, sorry.
Seconder for the motion. I'll ask for the third and final time. Is there a seconder for the motion? If not, the motion lapsed for want of a seconder, but I thought someone might have done a former Alderman Skidmore. No, who was it? Was that Mr. Skid? Yeah, Mr. Skidmore. Seconder for debate. But anyway, thanks, Councillor Smith. So I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
I'd like to see a solid fence put on that boundary as offered by the developer to be a physical barrier rather than the wire fencing for any sparks and things, because he said they do operate outside the workshop on the eastern side of the shed. So I just think that might be an additional safety factor if it was offered. Maybe it's worthwhile taking up.
Thank you. Councillor Mclaren, I go to the Director of Environmental Services for a response.
That's reasonable.
Yep, thank you. Other comments or questions about this development application before I ask you to vote, which obviously we have to have our votes recorded. If there's no the Director of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just need to, I think we should liaise with the developer. I don't think the tree remaining is to do with the, obscuring signage, etc. I think it's to do with the safe functioning of vehicles entering and leaving the site. So, if drainage is proposed later on and this tree isn't appropriate for the urban locality, I'd be advocating for its removal and replacement with something more appropriate.
Right, thank you, Mr. Director. I now go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I've just been looking at that overhead photo, and that tree is obviously going to be an issue with vehicles leaving the service station, being able to see traffic coming from the other direction as they cross it. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's probably does need to go. There's a nice tree, and I know I go past there quite often. There's always vehicles parked in the shade of that tree, but that's probably not going to be possible anyway. There's a entrance or exit at the right in front of it anyway. So unfortunately, it probably has to be removed. But hopefully, as the director said, hopefully it can be replaced with some other trees,
suitable species,
suitable places. So, perhaps I'll move a motion that goes similar to the recommendation, but adding to it that a solid fence be put along the western side of the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. Accept that motion from the Deputy Mayor. Is there a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Smith, thank you. You've seconded the motion. Is there further discussion? The Director, you think that's doable?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. An appropriate colour bond, is that what we're... Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
An appropriate, suitable, yeah. Mr. So moved. Sorry. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, can you...
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, well,
Maximum height allowed, 2100.
Right. So the mover and second are happy to include that in the motion.
Yep.
The maximum height of 20, we think, is 2100 mil. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you. We only do this once a month, so we can be forgiven. So if there's no further discussion, Further discussion, Councillor Mclaren.
Sorry, did I miss where suitable trees were going to be replaced in the business premises of the next door or on the nature strip? Or because if they're going to be replaced, won't that be a visual impediment to leaving the service station anyway?
With a suitable species, I thought, but
So that's at the developer's cost?
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Mclaren. Now, if there's no further discussion on this, it's great for council to be able to consider another development application. If there's no further discussion, I'd ask you, all those in favour, to please raise your hands. Thank you. I declare the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Indeed. Now, let's go over to page 337, 12.2, Crown Reserve Plan, the Director of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a statutory requirement that we're required to comply with by the end of June. You'll see there's a plan of these of the draft management plans that are being worked on. With the first one being the generic reserves, which sort of includes all the miscellaneous sort of parcels of Crown land throughout our Shire, and they're listed on page 338. There's some other ones coming with regards to the Golf Club, Lakes Centenary, Agriculture Innovation Centre, and the sports grounds and parks within the Shire. So this is the first part. It's been prepared by our town planner, and it's recommended that it go on public exhibition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Councillors, you have a recommendation there on page 338 for you to consider. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver is moving the recommendation. Is there a second? Councillor Winkie, thank you. Second to Councillor Winkie. Further discussion? If no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Right, councillors, on page 394, 12.3, the Draft Development Infrastructure Deferred Payment Policy. The Director.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This follows discussion at the Assets and Operations Committee. We think we've captured the thoughts of councillors at that meeting, and the changes are in red. We're recommending that it be placed on public exhibition to get general public's feedback, and remind councillors they too will have an opportunity to reconsider this policy at the next council meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director. Councillors, I think the town planner did do well capturing what we felt at that time, but of course I think we all, we look at documents and so on, and we come up with a few things, and I've come up with a few myself, but let's hear what any other councillor has to say in relation to the report, a very, very important report that is before us. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. On page 399, under operational procedures, the initial payment, or the developer responsible for the payment of the initial $50,000, it's been suggested that could be $50,000 or up to 5% of the developer costs. So, when it comes out, a significant cost of a couple of $1 million, $50,000 is not a lot of money. Whereas if it was on a percentage basis, then it's the developer has to put in a little bit more money, which is still not a lot of money, but it just shows a bit more.
You've got real skin in the game.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Oliver, was that what you were angling at?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something, Mr Deputy Mayor, you'd like to see.
Well, yes, perhaps the Director of Finance might.
Thank you. So I'll go to the Director of Finance and Administration for her comment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think something like that would be probably more equitable, so the larger developers or developments are required to make a larger contribution.
Thank you very much. Other comments, or go to Councillor Oliver?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the comments of the Finance Advisor and also the Deputy Mayor. Does that, if we move to make that change now, before it goes on exhibition, is that what we're going to do?
Well, that's what we're discussing now. Get it right to go out to public exhibition, and then council will again consider that coupled with any submissions that we receive.
So do you need a motion to implement
yes,
that,
if you want to do that now, unless you want to wait and hear other. Yeah. Thank you. Hold that thought. Thank you. I'll now go to Councillor Mclaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If it was 5%, the 50,000, it would be the same if it was if they spent $1 million on the infrastructure, and you said 5%, that would be 50,000. So anyone who's doing it needs less than that is paying more than 5%. But so it's not particularly equitable unless you start going above $1 million, if you know what I mean. So I've been thinking about what Councillor Oliver suggested at our workshop of the 50-50, and to me that seems more equitable, given that no matter how much you need, it's 50%, and you have a corresponding skin in the game according to how much you require council to commit to. I don't know whether that's appropriate, but
well, this is what we're here to discuss. So.
I liked it when, after a few days of thinking about it, and I thought maybe that wasn't such a bad idea. I don't know. Thanks,
Councillor McLaren. That's what we're here to tease out. And yes, it's a big jump from 5% to 50%, but at the same time, this is what we're here to tease out. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that. I mean, if you know, say even a $2 million development, that means they could come up with $1 million. Those sort of big projects would be probably staged anyway. So to have to come up with $1 million up front on a stage project would be, I wouldn't have thought it would have been fair. I realise it's pretty hard, but you know, any $50,000 is not a lot of money, even on a smaller development, I would have thought. I think the other way, 5% is probably not a lot on a $2 million. Maybe it might be better than 10% or something, I don't know. But yeah, I wouldn't like to see it go to 50% anyway.
Well, thank you. The Director of Environmental Services.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think you need to look at the objectives of your policy. You're trying to help development. You know, it's been an impediment, development stalled because of some of these upfront costs. So something as high as 50% is not much of a help. So, you know, I'm suggesting you put the policy up as is and take some feedback, and council can think about it more and tweak it at the before it's adopted.
Thank you. I probably differ with the Director. I'd prefer to get it right as far as we think at this time, and then put it out what we believe to be right at this time, and then we listen to other feedback. But again, that's we're all entitled to our view. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. At the workshop, I didn't actually put a percentage value on that.
No, you're fairly
broad. I feel that 5% is inadequate, and I feel that 50% is perhaps too much.
But it's a middle ground.
Yeah, and 10% is probably a little, was better than 5, but it's nowhere near as bad as 50. But I would be angling around about the 10% mark if it were my decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. That, I must say, that's probably what I'm thinking too, but as a starting point. Well, it's an important decision, councillors, so that's why I'm, allowing this debate to be prolonged to make sure, you know, everyone has their say if you've got something on your mind and your heart. Councillor Mclaren.
Is there a maximum amount that council feels should be a cap per development, or is that something
Case by
case? Do we want to set a cap for our exposure, or like outstanding at any one time?
So this is, thanks Councillor McLaren, this is when, this is another interesting one, because if you could set a cap and yet we may have, I don't know, on the off chance, 2 or 3 or more developers, and if we've set that cap, then I suppose you'd have to come back to council and ask for more, but it's not a silly question either, is it? Thank you. The Director of Administration Finance.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the policy probably does have a little bit of protection and guidance in that regard, because it mentions it's subject to council's availability of funds. So that's kind of, I guess, our backstop. If we don't feel that we can support that developer at that time, then we can say no.
That's a good point. In relation to the 10% suggestion by Councillor Oliver, is that something that you think would be more realistic?
Well, it's asking for more commitment from the developer, so yeah, it's not the 50%, which would probably be an impediment to development, and yeah, a bit more significant than the 5%. But yeah, 5% was just touted as, for example.
As a starting point, yep. Thanks very much. Mr General Manager, do you have a view that you'd like to share with Council on this one? You're deep in thought.
Yeah. No, I'm just listening, Mr Mayor. I think, you know, the 10% certainly, they've got to have some skin in the game at the end of the day. And similarly, I think there needs to be a minimum amount, whether that be 50,000 or whatever, because again, it's not meant to help someone who's got a $100,000 development. It's meant to someone who can't afford the development because it's a huge amount of infrastructure up front. My other thought was in terms of Councillor Mclaren's comment about the maximum amount. I think that's pretty well regulated by the fact that the subdivisions have to be approved by us. You know, to go up over millions of dollars, you're going to have a lot of lots, and they're going to have to significantly justify the fact that there's a demand for it. And I honestly don't think that would be able to be done. You know, if you're talking 200 or 300 lots, that's very difficult. So I think it is self-regulated itself by the fact that council has the right to say yay or nay to the development or the assistance for the development.
Thank you. So therefore, you're thinking that 10% is reasonable, but you still think that something like 50,000 as a minimum should still be in the conversation?
I think there has to be a minimum amount because we're trying to, as I said, we're trying to encourage people to take that leap of faith for bigger developments. You know, not to just subdivide a block into two lots. It's you know, significant developments.
Thank you. Councillors, any other comments? I mean, I just had one that in relation to. I just had here that, you know, this sort of thing, should we be including a clause of those that, you know, that have been bankrupt, for example, within X period of time? I don't know whether that's relevant, whether that's necessary. That was just the only thing that I could see coupled with that initial putting more skin in the game financially. That was the only other thing that I was thinking. Now, I'm going now to Councillor Judd.
Yeah, just following on your comment about the bankruptcy, the main thing we have to make sure is that we've got to presume that all developers could go under. So we've got to have the caveats or whatever in place so that we're covered all the time. So it doesn't matter who it is. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's not just about what may be happening now. It's, future developers which we hope will come to the fore. I'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
In regard to people being bankrupt, I mean, they've only got to change the name of their business or something and put it in their wife's name or something like that to get around that sort of thing, so I don't think it means a lot anyway, really.
Righto, that's fine. Thank you very much. I now go to Councillor Mclaren.
I was just curious why it was a confidential agreement. When I looked at the Golden Fields water policy, its funding was available to any purchaser of a block if they wanted to see what was owed on the block or what have you. So I didn't know whether, upon application, if it was available for the knowledge of prospective purchasers.
Thanks, Councillor Mclaren. I think that's a fair question. I must admit, my initial reaction is that I would have thought that it's if council are in a commercial arrangement with a particular individual, then that would be a commercial in confidence matter. But I'd be interested to hear the views of the General Manager on that. The General Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think it's a balancing act. I mean, part of the issue is we have to be totally transparent with ratepayers, but there's also the privacy issues involved in dealing with businesses or indeed ratepayers. So it's a matter of striking that balance to inform residents of and ratepayers of commercial arrangements we have, but protecting the privacy of the people that we're dealing with. It's a difficult question.
It is. Like, to me, I don't see an issue with the amount, that this is an arrangement under this policy, but I don't know how I'd feel about the individual party that council have that arrangement with being in the public arena, unless it was agreed to by them. I don't know. Anyway, it's important policy, so we need to do our best to get it right, in my view, before we put it out. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just back to the percentage put in by the developer. Are we talking about the percentage of the entire development, or are we talking about a percentage of a stage of the development if it's done in 1, 2, 3 or 4 stages?
Oh, good question. I had in my head that it was the total development, but I'm not sure. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would work out the same. You'd just be paying it in stages.
Yes,
That's right, yeah. So it'd be a percentage of council's contribution, I assume, not the total development. And you'd pay for stage 1, and then when you complete that, pay for stage 2, I assume.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Councillor Oliver.
I was just thinking, as the developer, it would be less of a impost at any one time. So, if they were asked to commit up front for the entire development, that would probably balk them. But if they were doing it in stages, say 10% for argument's sake of stage 1, and then stage 1's completed, then they start again with stage 2 with another 10%. I understand they'll still pay the same amount, but it's a little bit easier on their finances if they do it in stages. That's what I'm getting at.
Thank you. The Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, just a reminder that it's only on a percentage of the council infrastructure costs. It doesn't include electricity, gas, water. It's just, curb and gutter, sewer, road, stormwater infrastructure. So it's not the whole stage, just the council infrastructure stage.
Thank you. Councillor Mclaren.
If it was the 10% of the total project cost, you'd have to divide that up over the total number of blocks, and the repayment would be however long the last block sold. Whereas if it was 10% of stage 1, you'd almost clear it after those first stage was done to redraw for the next stage, because it would only be distributed over those blocks that were being registered. So there'd be say $1 million over 100 houses, it would be X amount per house, and as they get sold, so we'd get our money back rather than having a long-term debt for council. I would feel more comfortable with a staged one and a percentage of each stage, dividing that over those houses, because then we will get our money back as they are sold, and then the next stage. So you could maybe keep a floating balance of that 10% amount, and as they repay, they can redraw for the next stage. Perhaps you have to have some advice on that, but that's what I'm thinking.
I go to the Director of Administration and Finance.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if it was a staged development, they'd pay their percentage of that stage up front, and then we'd put the caveats over those blocks and recoup those costs, and then when they were ready to go to stage 2, we'd take their percentage of that stage. Is that it?
Yes, otherwise if it's 10% of the total project cost up front, then that's too much up front, yeah.
Thank you. Go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just think that through a bit. I guess perhaps there could be a situation where stage 1, the initial cost could be quite high because there may be work that's got to be done initially that's got to cover the whole stages, or perhaps so. It could vary from one situation to another or something.
Thank you. Well, councillors, we are having some very good discussion here. However, perhaps has come to the time where we need to just remember we will get the other chance to consider what we put out. The Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation, but with the addition of, on page 399, where it says initial $50,000 or up to 10%, whichever is the highest, if that's the right way to say it.
That's the narrative, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, so you're moving that the recommendation with the inclusion of, on page 399 under Operation Procedure in red, that the initial 50,000 or 10%, whichever is the greater. Yeah, okay. So, thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Thank you. Councillor Oliver?
Just a comment.
Sorry, I need a seconder. Councillor Winkie, thank you. Now Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. As the Deputy just said, the initial start-up costs are going to be greater than the last stage, so to speak. Just to confuse it even more, perhaps 10% of the entire job divided by 4, so they've got equal payments, because if they're going to be paying the upfront costs at 10% initially, that might be an impediment on their proceeding with the job.
Unless there's discretion given to officers for, arrangements, but if you want to enshrine it in the policy, that's up to.
Perhaps we just let it go as it is, and discretion be used.
Well, we can tease it out again
on,
next month. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. So further discussion on the motion. If there's no further discussion, I will put the motion, and again, keeping in mind that it will be out for 28 days, Mr. Director.
That's right, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So 28 days, and we will see what feedback, and I'd like to think we would receive some from the community on this. Effectively, it's an exciting policy. I, for one, am very proud of Council for putting this before us, and let's now hand it over to the community. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. Further discussion, Councillor Winkie.
Just in regard to the wording, I think it should just be costs up to 10% and not up to, just costs to 10%.
Yes, infrastructure costs of 10%, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for that. So the mover and seconder are now happy that costs to 10%. Does that, I don't know about the 2, Mr. General Manager. Should we say council infrastructure?
No, I think change the 2 to or. $50,000 of capital infrastructure costs, or 10%, whichever is the greatest.
Yes, okay, that's better. Thanks very much for that. Now, the mover and second are happy. I will now put this motion to councillors to vote on. So all those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried, and we'll look forward to receiving that report at our March meeting. for any feedback. Thank you very much. Anything of a further late urgent nature from the Director?
Nothing, Mr Mayor, but just upon reflection, it probably will come back to the assets and ops in April because the 28 days won't
of course.
allow submissions to be collated, so it'll be probably the April assets and ops.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
But nothing more, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Right, councillors, let's go to page 401, the Department of Administration and Finance report, and 13.1, the quarterly budget review. That's in the hands of the Director.